Today we are talking about from executive to non-executive director and how to make that shift, because it's a strategic shift that you need to make. But so many people miss that, and because they do not make that shift, what happens is that they keep applying for board roles and then they just don't get to the point where they either take on a whole bunch of voluntary roles, if they can even get appointed to those, or they simply give up and they say, board work isn't for me. They keep choosing the same people over and over again, which does happen, but there's a reason for that. They keep choosing the same people over and over again, so I'm not even going to bother. And they give up. And I don't want you to give up. I really want you to succeed. I really want you to become a board member, because this is what I do and this is my passion. And if I can see each and every one of you appointed to at least one board role within 6 to 12 months, that is what I want to see. That is why I get out of bed in the mornings. Now my slides don't want to move. Come on, guys. Right. Now, I just want to make everyone aware that all the material that I use here, it is our own intellectual property. It's not copied from anywhere. It's not made up by any machine learning. This is what I created from many years of working in this industry. And I founded NED Careers in 2021. I grabbed Chani and I said, listen, are you up for working with me? Because I know how Chani works, and she is, I can say, the heart and soul of this organization. She's the backbone. What I do is I help senior professionals to reposition themselves and to reposition their executive experience so that it aligns and it signals their governance readiness to boards. Because what happens is that people have all this executive experience and they assume that, okay, so it's automatic that I'll be able to get a board role in the sector that I'm working in. I'm well known in the sector. I'm well known within this business. I've worked in this big company, so automatically people will want me on their board. And actually, they missed the boat on that a little bit. I've been doing this since 2013. From 2013 to 2021, I worked within numerous companies that built companies where they try to help people get on boards. And I've seen it from all sides. So from the side of the director who wants to become a non-executive director, I've seen it from the side of the boards where they are looking for someone, because I have helped with recruitment. Now and then we still take on recruitment exercises, but that's not that often. We usually help those who are recruiting to find the right board members. But I've seen it from all sides. And what I've learned and what I'm going to share with you today is practical experience. It's what I learned by doing this. I'm not a board member. Many people make the mistake to think that, oh, okay, so she will be a good board member. I'll be the crappiest board member that you can find because I talk way too much. I will talk over everybody and they will want to get rid of me from that board. I think they'll probably want me there the first 2 meetings, and then they'll start telling me, oh, it's okay, we'll still pay you. You just don't come to the meeting. So no, I don't serve on boards because I don't see myself as someone who is really positioned to serve on boards. I know what to do from the way you start looking for a board role to where you get into the boardroom. As much as I know what happens inside the boardrooms, because I have been coaching board members for many, many years, and obviously they share what happens inside the boardroom, and I've built up a wealth of knowledge around that. I don't have any aspirations to serve on a board on any. So my absolute goal in life is to see how many people I can get onto boards. And that count keeps ticking up, and it makes me proud to do what I'm doing, because the success, I measure my success by my client's success. And my client isn't successful until they are placed on a board that they want to be placed on. The board that's the right board for them, then they are successful. And once they reach that, where they can say that they are now successful, that's the point where I feel like I can now breathe, because I've reached the measure of success. So that is everything I do. And that's my focus. That's what I talk about. Even my friends sometimes say, can we talk about something else? Because I've got two things I talk about. The one is PTS, the pop group. I love PTS. Okay, too much information. But the other thing is placing people on. That's the two things. That's it. And sometimes my grandson, because he's the love of my life. But when it comes to boards, I am really passionate about boards finding the right people, and that those who have the urge to serve on it and to make that a goal, to help them to be connected to those boards. Because the world is facing so many issues, the world is facing so many problems, and sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming. I don't even watch the news, because through my coaching clients and through people I am connected to, I already hear so much of what is happening around us and what is going on in the world. And I'm already overwhelmed without even watching the news, without following every little bit of what's happening. I'm completely overwhelmed. But I can't do anything about it. There's no way in which I can solve environmental issues. There's no way in which I can solve the economic issues that, well, just about every country in the world is struggling with at the moment. I can't do anything about the fuel price that we are seeing skyrocket all over. It's not just in our country, it is everywhere that this is happening. But by empowering people to serve on boards, I feel like I can make a difference, because every person that gets placed on a board who's gone, I can almost say, through my hands. When you sit on that board and you help them make a decision that makes the world slightly better, whether it's for that company, and then it has that knock-on effect where that company, that what they do makes it better for their clients, and the client finds something that makes it better. In that way, we are going to solve these issues. So I don't feel overwhelmed, because I know the people who I help to get onto books, they are the ones that make the difference. And that is why I'm so passionate about it, because I want to make a difference. And in a way, by having so many people here and there get placed on books, the difference that becomes much bigger. And that to me is what matters. So our whole business is based on the board readiness framework, because we, as I said, we don't work with people inside the boardroom. As much as I sometimes will coach someone, clients will contact me and they say, listen, I'm struggling with something in the boardroom, and they will book a few coaching sessions with me. As much as I know that part, our work is focused on getting people ready to serve on boards and helping them to make that shift, to get onto a board. Now, that is built on, first of all, your contribution. So what contribution is it that you will be able to make to a board? What can you bring to the table? What is it that you have? But also, not what do you have, but what is it that will align with a board? So which type of will align with what you bring? Because you need to look at that intersection of what it is that you have to offer and what it is that the board needs. And where those two come together, then that is the board that you need to go after. So you can't, I always tell my clients, and I see there are some of them online here this morning. So you can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and just apply all over the place and submit applications here, there, and everywhere. And then you get to the point where you've applied to so many boards that you can't even remember which ones you applied to because you just took a chance. Yes, I agree. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut now and then, and even a broken clock is right twice a day. So you might find a board trial like that, but that is not intentional. And the biggest success that I've seen happen with my clients is when they are very intentional about not only which boards they are going after, but how they are going after each one of those board roles, because they might be going after board A and board B. And for board A, they have one way of getting onto that. It might be a formal application. It might be that they've seen an advertisement and they decided to go for that board role. So they get the whole application written, get all the documents together, and they submit that. And that's how they eventually get appointed to that board. Board B might not have a current vacancy, but there are still ways for them to get onto that board's radar so that that board knows, listen, this person is ready to serve on our board. So when two things might happen. There are some boards that will go as far as create a role for you. They will literally, if they find the right person and they see this person is an absolute fit for their board, they will make space. They will create a role and they will put them on their board. There are few boards that do that. Otherwise, they will keep your name, they will keep your profile, they will remember you. And the moment someone steps down or falls away for some reason and they have a board vacancy, they'll get in touch with you and ask you, are you still willing to serve with us? And you will get that board role. So, but it's a case of seeing where you and the board align and going after those and not the ones where you have basically zero chance of getting appointed or where there's nothing that you can say, okay, I really want to be on this board. It's just a case of, okay, I need a board role, so randomly you just pick that one. You need to be intentional about it. Now, being intentional about it gets us to positioning. And this is the part that most people miss, is how do you position yourself as a board member? Now, there are a few ways in which you can position yourself correctly, and I'm going to discuss a few of them today, but this is basically what we do, is to help people get themselves positioned in the right way so that boards will look at them and see them as possible members. And then activation. There's no use in positioning yourself for a board role, but then sitting back and waiting for something to happen. You need to activate that plan. We help you to put the plan in place, and then you need to activate it. And we help you with that. We give you that first push. And sometimes with some clients, I push them further and I keep pushing until they get there. And I can be very pushy. So, but the activation is the part that actually gets you placed, because you can have the best documents, you can have the best narrative, but unless you make that publicly available, unless that reaches the board ecosystem so that you become a known entity within the board ecosystem, you are not going to get a proper appointment. So those three work together. So what's your contribution and how does that align with what boards look for. How are you positioned? So how will see you? And have you activated your plan to get onto boards? So what are you missing? Because if you are struggling to get a board role, you are missing something there. And you need to find what it is that you are missing so that you can fill that gap. And this is something that people often misunderstand. And they might think that they are missing the right qualifications. So they keep studying. Or they might think that, oh, but I don't have the right experience, so I'm not going to try. But they don't think about, how am I going to take my experience and put it in such a way, position myself through my experience in such a way that boards will actually consider me as a possible board member. Now, what boards look for, and this is something that, well, since, like I said, I've worked in this industry since 2013. And this was the first thing that I remember writing an article for a client. And when we did the research, and it ended up being a list of articles, a whole series. And it was all about these things that boards look for. It used to be the 5 essential things, and then the 2 almost additional qualities that boards were looking for in their board members. So in very simple language, boards are looking for previous board experience. Now, those of you on the call who do not have previous board experience, don't give up, because it's like a school leaver. You know, when they start applying for jobs and then places say, oh, but we want someone with previous experience. And they're like, how do I get the experience? I've just completed school. So, or my university, I've just got my degree. So how do I get this experience? And in the same way, you are going to feel that way if you do not have previous board experience. Now, many of my clients who come to say, but I have no experience. So what do I do? And you probably have experience that that you're not aware of, or that you're not thinking of in the right way. You're not framing it in the right way. So it's not seen as board-related experience. The next thing that they look for is your skill set. And that is day-to-day job. What are you doing? What industry are you working in? Are you a doctor? Are you a lawyer? Are you a CA? What do you do for a living? Are you a business person? Have you run startups? Have you founded a number of companies, or maybe one company? What have you done? So what are the skills that you bring? And that skill set can be one skill, but it can be the one skill that a specific board looks for. It can be many skills, and sometimes in documents and even in interviews, you need to tone down a little bit. Otherwise, it becomes so much that they get overwhelmed and they just hear all of these skills that you have. And as much as in many respects, it's good to have a lot of skills, you need to know that you need to make them aware of having the skill that they want, that they are looking for. The other thing is relevant qualifications and training. Now, if you go onto our website, or if you receive our paid vacancies booklet every week, and you look through it, you will see that oftentimes they are looking for a certain degree, or they might just say, we are looking for someone with a master's. That's one that I've seen quite often lately, is they just say, we're looking for someone with a master's. So it's not just that they are looking for someone with a master's. What they are actually saying is, we are looking for someone with certain qualities. Because to have the determination and the grit to hang in there until you've got your master's degree does take a certain type of personality. So it's not that they are looking for the masters as much as they are looking for someone with a certain level of grit and push and drive in life. So if they say, okay, we are working in this sector, so we are looking for someone with a master's in this specific area, obviously that is what they are looking for. You need to have that. But when they just say in general, looking for someone with a master's degree, then it might not be that they are looking for a specific degree, that they are looking for someone with specific personality traits. And you need to be able to show them that if you do not have a master's. Now, your networks and connections, and this is something that every person who works in the board field will be able to tell you, that research shows that around 67%. Now, there's a lot of research going around, and some of them will tell you, no, but it's just 19%. And there are others that say 99%. But over the years, I've looked at the research that you can depend on, the ones that it's not just someone calling 10 people and asking them, listen, how did you get appointed to a board? And then 9 out of those 10 don't even have controls. But the research that have really been done by organizations that are dependable, that research shows that 67% or around 67% of people get appointed through their network and their connections. And most of you will be able to say to me, yes, I know that if I don't know someone on a board, I'm not going to get appointed to that. Now, in a sense, that can be true. But being positioned correctly will circumvent that for you and will help you get onto a board. And what do you do if you don't have the right network or connections? You start building the right network, but you need to build it in the right way. And that is one of the things that I'm passionate about and that I like to teach, because there are some tricks of the trade that helps you get onto the right networks and to help you get seen in the right network so that you can get yourself appointed. Then something that boards often look for nowadays is diversity. And when I say diversity, everybody's mind immediately goes to either gender or race, sometimes age. But diversity is much wider. You can have diversity in every aspect of life. You can have diversity of religion. You can have diversity of experience. You can have diversity in thinking. You can have diversity in ability or disability. So there is so much diversity that can contribute to boards, that it is not only about being a man or a woman or about being of a certain color. It is about your full picture, but you need to be able to get across the message of how your specific type of diversity, whether it's even something like diversity of location, and you being in a country that this board wants to, I can say, infiltrate, a country where they want to go to market, and you have specific board experience or business experience in that country. Now, if you do your research and you become aware of this company wanting to expand into that country, and that's where you live, that's where you have your business, you know how to build a business there. You have a case to make to convince them that they can appoint you because you have the know-how, and they can appoint you to their board to help guide them in infiltrating that market. So many points of diversity, but you need to really make a concerted effort to sit and almost dissect yourself to see where your different points of diversity lie that you can bring to boards. and then find a way of creating that narrative that will convince them. And then your ability to fit in with the rest of the board, that is something that especially chairs are really concerned about, is your ability to fit in. And some will call it cultural fit, but they want to know that not only will you be able to contribute your experience and your expertise to the sport, they want to know that you're not going to be a troublemaker, that you're not going to be a risk to the sport, because chairs are extremely risk averse. They don't want a board where they are going to struggle. They don't want a board where every single meeting ends up in a screaming match, and it's always this one person just flying off the handle no matter what happens. So they are going to test you. They are going to, in the interview, sometimes pressure test you. They are going to do some background research about you. They are going to call your referees and specifically ask them about things like this. And if they in any way pick up that you can be a risk to their board, that you won't fit in with the rest of them, you are not going to get that appointment. So you need to also find a way to let them know that you are not a risk. And you don't do that with one sentence. You don't do that with one discussion. You do that with your whole narrative. And when I talk about your whole narrative, I'm talking about now you come across online. I'm talking about what do your application documents portray about you. And even when you go into the board interview and they start asking you questions that might even seem a bit combative at some times, then you need to understand why that happens. They are not trying to pick a fight with you. They are asking you the difficult questions because they want to pressure test you. They want to see how you will handle this if it happens inside the board. So showing them in every way that you possibly can that you are not a risk to get appointed, then that is how you will get an appointment. And the last thing, which is probably to me personally, and I suppose it goes with my personality, but to me, the important thing is your passion. If you don't have passion for what that board does, if you don't have passion for something within the industry, in the company, or the organization, or the cause that they are working for, you don't apply, because that board role is going to drain you to the point where you can hardly get out of bed on the days where you have board meetings. And doing the pre-reading is going to feel like the biggest task that you've ever done in your life, where the pre-reading might have taken you 3 or 4 hours. Now it's going to take you 3 or 4 days because it's like you simply can't get through it because you have no passion for it. Find the causes that you are passionate about. And for that reason, you need to know yourself. And that's why I always start with, who are you in the board ecosystem? And only then we can find you the right role. Because if you don't know exactly who you are and what it is that you bring to the board and what it is that you're passionate about, you're going to fail. Now, is this really what boards are looking for? And I can tell you it is what boards are looking for, but with one caveat. They don't see it that way. That, what I've just shown you, is very simplistic in what they are looking for. The way boards see it and what you need to communicate, and you need to communicate this when you interact online, when you interact with people in person, when you are writing your application documents for a board role, when you go for the board interview, even when you are doing your research about the role, before you even start writing your application. And those who work with me will be like, oh, she's Mrs. Research, because I'm forever just carrying on about research. You need to research the boards before you start applying. Now, those boards want you to communicate your governance relevance. So not previous board experience. Obviously, they are looking at that as well. But what does your governance relevance look like? And your strategic judgment. Do you have the judgment that a board member needs? So they are going to measure that in different ways in your applications, and even they will go as far as to go and to read articles that you've published online. They will go as far as, if you've done a podcast, to go and listen to your podcast, to see, do you show that strategic that judgment? Do you show that governance relevance, that leadership maturity? Because people are hammering on about leadership. And I'm someone who talks about leadership every day of my life. But you get leadership and you get leadership. And you get leadership and you get leadership and you get leadership and you get leadership. Because there are so many levels of leadership. And there are so many fields and areas of leadership. Your child, who is the little group leader of 6 children in his class, is as much a leader as the CEO in your business. He's as much a leader as you are, who maybe is a head of a department within a certain company. So leadership is everywhere, but they want to know your leadership maturity, because obviously they're not going to appoint your 10-year-old child to a board, even though your child might be a prolific leader. They want to appoint someone with leadership maturity, and you need to find a way to show the level of maturity that you have as a leader. And that maturity has nothing to do with age. That maturity is almost a personality trait, but it's something that's not, that you're not born with it. That leadership maturity comes with experience. It comes with being pushed as a leader over and over again, and until you can actually act as a leader. And that is what they are looking for, because if they have a board of mature leaders, then immediately the cultural fit will align across that board, because everybody will bring that maturity to the boardroom. Then oversight capability. Do you have the ability to move from operations to oversight, from operations to governance? And that is what you need to be able to show in every way, shape, or form that you communicate with a board, that you communicate within the board ecosystem. You need to be able to show that oversight capability that you have, because you know you have it. But how do you translate that into a language that the board understands? Then stakeholder awareness, because companies have stakeholders. And I'm now not only talking about shareholders. Obviously, your public companies have shareholders, even private companies have a number of shareholders sometimes. But when you look at your stakeholders, now your stakeholders can be anyone from the clients you serve, the community the organization works in, the board, or the board members themselves are stakeholders. The board is a stakeholder within a company. The staff who work within the company are stakeholders. So stakeholders are so broad. And what section of stakeholders are you most aware of? Or do you have the personality where you have this bird's eye view of all the stakeholders, and you can see it from each one's point of view? And there are literally, I was talking, one of our course, people who are doing my current course, she's a psychiatrist, but she works specifically with businesses. And like she said, people don't realize how the different stakeholders are needed for different things, and a specific view on specific stakeholders. And there are tests that you can get, that you can do, and it's like a psychometric test where they can tell you, oh, okay, this is how aware you are of this state, this type of stakeholder. This is how aware you are of that type of stakeholder. Or you couldn't care about the stakeholders less. You are only focused on the task at hand. So there are tests that they can do to actually do that. But boards would rarely go that far. As long as you can communicate your stakeholder awareness and it aligns with what they need, you are there. Then you, how does that one say? A for away. Now, your board contribution fit is not only how you will fit in with the board, but how the contribution that you can bring fits with what the board needs. So all of these things, from your governance relevance, your strategic judgment, leadership maturity, oversight capability, stakeholder awareness, board contribution fit. This is how boards see those other 7 things. So your diversity and your experience, your previous board experience, the skill set that you bring, all of those things are actually encompassed by this. And this is what boards want. This is the language that they are looking for. And that is where the shift lies. That is what you need to communicate. Just communicating a list of boards that you've sat on, or a list of leadership positions you've had, and what you do on a day-to-day basis is not going to get you a board. It might be impressive. I see extremely impressive CVs, but that are not remotely what a board will want. Although the board wants that, they want it put in a way where they have insight into, do you have insight into governance? Do you have insight into the shift that you need to make from being an operator within a company to becoming a governor of a company or an organization? And that shift is the important part. And that is where executives miss. Now, boards are not simply reviewing your credentials. They are evaluating your board readiness. And all of those factors on the previous slide are ways in which they evaluate your board readiness. All of those are tick boxes for board readiness. They don't want to know, are you ready to manage your company? They want to know that you are ready to serve on this board. You are ready to govern alongside the other board members. Now, your board application ecosystem that you need to create for yourself entails your application strategy. First of all, it's your network. But today, I really want you to take note of the application strategy that you need to put together. And that application strategy typically includes your board CV. And this is something that I sometimes nowadays shock people with, but you need more than one type of board CV. And those of you who have done my course before, please get in touch with me because we need to talk about this. You need more than one type of board CV because you're going to be applying to different types of boards. And a board CV isn't a board CV, isn't a board CV. There are now, with all the developments within technology and with AI, the board CV template that I used a year ago is completely different from the template that I use now, or the templates, because there's more than one. It differs completely from the templates that I use now. Those board CVs still work, but when your application ends up on a database, if you use that board CV with that language that those board CVs were written in, your odds of being appointed is halved. Simply because AI and the development in technology has gone so far just in the last 6 months that being chosen from hundreds, sometimes thousands of CVs that are lying on a database is becoming more and more difficult. So you need to make sure that the narrative that you have in your CV actually 100% aligns with what they want. So that database, the algorithm that they use on there, will give them your CV. Otherwise, your application is going to lie on a database and not one human eye is going to see it. You want the human eye to see it because it's the human eye that's going to eventually make the decision and invite you to the interview. The database that doesn't invite you to an interview, there you are just one amongst sometimes thousands. But you want to be one of the 5 or the 10 that they ask that database to give them. And only then you get your CV gets read, your applications, documents get read, and you do get invited for an interview where you can prove your point and show them that you are the right person for that position. You have to have the right policy. You have to have a cover letter. Please do not use a generic cover letter. You have to have the right cover letter for the right position. So I want to go as far as to say you need to rewrite your cover letter for every single application that you do. If you don't rewrite your cover letter so that it suits that specific board, you're going to miss the mark. You have to have a supporting statement. And whether they ask for a supporting statement or not, and whether you are going to submit it or not, you need to write that supporting statement so that you yourself can determine for yourself whether you are a suitable fit for that role. If you cannot complete a supporting statement and convince yourself through that supporting statement that you should be appointed, don't even bother applying, because how are you going to convince them why they should appoint you if you can't convince yourself? Then your LinkedIn positioning. LinkedIn is becoming more and more powerful as a tool to get not only a job, but a job. And LinkedIn itself they are making so many changes to LinkedIn that I'm struggling to keep up at the moment. I am doing courses now to keep up with all the changes because they are now adapting to AI and new algorithms and even changing some of their products and their packages. So getting your LinkedIn positioning right is a fine line because you can be found on LinkedIn for board position, but you need to have your LinkedIn profile written correctly. And then you need an application tracker, because if you start applying for board roles, you are probably not going to be appointed on the first application. So you're not going to apply once and sit back and know that you are going to be serving on that board within 3 months. That might happen, but the chances are minuscule of that happening. So you are going to continuously be looking for board roles. And you will get to a point where you've got enough and you will start saying no to new roles. You won't apply anymore. But then that tenure, because you might have a term of 2 years, you might have a term of 3 years. Sometimes it can be renewed for another term, but most of the times they won't renew it more than once. So suddenly all your board roles are gone and you need to start applying again. So remaining front of mind and always looking for positions where you can apply so that you are always filling that basket as it gets emptied on the other side. As you are losing board roles because the terms come to an end, then the basket is already filled with other roles. So you need to keep that balance. And for that reason, you always have to be visible within the board ecosystem. And one of the ways to do that is by having your LinkedIn profile be very visible in the ecosystem. And sorry, I'm onto the application tracker. Sorry, lack of. So as you are applying for new board roles, you need to keep track of those applications because you are not going to be able to keep track of the applications. If you've done 20 applications, I can assure you, you're not going to remember what you added to each application. You're not going to remember what your focus was for each application. And you're going to be caught unawares with a short notice interview. I was contacted yesterday again by a client who was, I helped him with an application for a position in Denmark months ago. And suddenly they contacted him yesterday. They want an interview with him on Tuesday. So we had to quickly go and find where is the application, what did we submit to them, exactly what is it that their focus is on. Sorry. So you need a form of tracking for your application so that you know where to find them, where did you apply, and what the result was, and how can you learn from the result that you had. Each one of these documents must reinforce the same governance narrative. They mustn't be disjointed. Each document needs to focus on exactly why you should be appointed to that specific board. Now, why strong executives often underperform? The common mistakes that they make is they submit executive CVs or the wrong CV for a board role. Submitting an executive CV is probably the biggest mistake that you can make because it showcases you as an executive and not as a governor. Then using operational language, once again, using operational language as opposed to governance language in your CV will showcase you as an operator. Boards are not appointing operators. Boards are appointing governors. And then having a generic cover letter. That is, it drives me nuts when I see people have one generic cover letter and they just change the name of the company in the cover letter and sometimes the position. And they send that generic cover letter to for every application. If you just change that today, please start to write a cover letter for every application that you submit. Then weak supporting statements. You need to make sure that the supporting statement that you write is strong enough to really support the question, why should we appoint you to this board? And that is why you start with the supporting statement first, before you even decide whether you are going to apply for that job, because the supporting statement can be part of the decision-making process. And then inconsistent positioning. That is where you have all these documents, but the one positions you in a certain way, and then your cover letter positions you slightly different. But when they go on your LinkedIn profile, you look like someone completely different to that. So your positioning, your narrative that you have as a board member needs to be consistent across the board. You need to be so clear on who you are and what you have to offer this, that no matter whether they look at something online, whether they look at your CV, whether they look at your cover letter, your supporting statement, whether they listen to you in the interview, this positioning narrative of yours needs to be consistent everywhere. So you need to find who you are to create the narrative that you want them to know about you. And you want to create that narrative. You don't want them to have that fundamental attribution error that Malcolm Gladwell wrote about. You don't want that fundamental attribution error to have an impact on your positioning and your ability to be appointed. And then poor application discipline. I've sat in interviews where the person coming for the interview doesn't know which company they are interviewing with. They are barely aware of having applied for that position. And it is so clear when they sit in that interview that they have no idea what it is that this board actually needs. So please have the application discipline to keep track of your applications. Keep track of what these boards want. I have an application tracker that I give to my clients that I use when I apply for a client. Then I use that application tracker and I give those to my clients to use for their board applications because it helps them keep track of what they've applied for, where they have been interviewed, and what the results were, and what they can learn from the whole process, whether they got the board role or not, what they can learn from that. Experience won't get you appointed. Documents won't get you appointed. Your network is not going to get you appointed, but positioning will. If your positioning is right, then your experience will get you appointed. Your documents will get you appointed, and your network is going to help you get onto a board. But it all relies on the positioning. If the positioning is the foundation of all that, it doesn't matter how well the others are. If you are positioned incorrectly, you are always going to be the executive. You are never going to be seen as the governor or the board member. Now, I know we are at 11 o'clock, so those of you who need to go, you are more than welcome to go. Those of you who are interested, I just want to quickly run through the 6-week NED transition program because I did say that I would talk about this. And this is where we take all of this thinking that I was talking about up till now and we apply it. And I've actually changed the program slightly because of the changes that have come in this sphere, of the changes that have been happening. I've changed the program slightly so that it adapted and it's now adapted to keep up with the changes that is happening around AI, with the changes that's happening around how they are looking at your board CV and how they actually find board members now. Now, what I teach is to understand board expectations, understand what you have to offer and what the board expects from you. So understanding board expectations and defining your board contribution, what you can bring to the board, and putting that in the right narrative and in the right context. That is what you're going to learn. Positioning yourself clearly. Like I said, positioning is everything. If you cannot position yourself in a way that you are seen as a possible board member, you are not going to get a board role. And then to build visibility within the board ecosystem, because you need to be visible within the board ecosystem before you even enter it. The moment we start with the program, we start focusing on how to build your visibility. And by the 5th session of the program, you are in the ecosystem. You are becoming part of the board ecosystem. And you need to be in, and you need to be visibly in there to actually be able to get board role. Now, who the program is for is senior professionals, executives, and those who are seriously considering a board role. This program is hard work. It's extremely hard work. One of the attendees said to me yesterday that she completely underestimated the amount of work that it actually takes. But this program assures you that you stand the best chance of getting appointed to it. This program is not for school leavers. It is not for people at the beginning of their career. It is for people who find themselves ready to take that next step to a board role. So if you have built a few years experience, you do not need to be the CEO. You do not need to have to be a certified director, but you need to have something that you can build on to be able to make a success of this program. Now, I am going to create something for people who are starting in their careers so that they can start positioning themselves early on. But this is not the program for that. This program is specifically focused at those people who already have the substance that they just need to put the narrative around and get their positioning right. Then you can get the whole role. And I'm proud to say that with this program, our previous attendees, every single one of them, because I asked them to please let me know when they get appointed, and for some of them, I actually help them with their appointments. So those who have done this program, and I've been doing this program and similar forms of it for just over 3 years now, 90% of those get an appointment within the first year of completing the program. And I can say that apart from one, 100% have got new board roles within 2 years. So, and they all say that they just made that shift and that helped them to get their appointment. Now, if you've been on the program and 6 months have passed and you haven't got the board role yet, you need to get in touch with me, because then you have lost one of the stitches that you were knitting with. And we need to find where that hole in your jersey is so that we can get that fixed and help you get an appointment. It's not about whether you are experienced enough. It is whether you are positioned in a way that boards recognize. That is what the gap is, and that is what the program is aimed at. So if you are interested in signing up for the program, Janie will drop a link to this next cohort in the chat box. You can follow that link. You can sign up directly via Teachable. If you want to talk to someone, you can email Janie. Cohorts are kept small on purpose. I do not want more than 6 people on the live sessions, because then it is difficult to answer everybody's questions in time, and the sessions drag on too long. So thank you so much for hanging in there with me today.